The Lord God has given me the tongue of the learned, that I should know how to speak a word in season to him who is weary. He awakens me morning by morning. He awakens my ear to hear as the learned. The Lord God has opened my ear, and I was not rebellious, nor did I turn away. I gave my back to those who struck me, and my cheeks to those who plucked out the beard. I did not hide my face from shame and spitting, for the Lord God will help me. Therefore I will not be disgraced. Therefore I have set my face like a flint, and I know that I will not be ashamed. He is near who justifies me, who will contend with me. Let us stand together. Who is my adversary? Let him come near me. Surely the Lord God will help me. Who is he who will condemn me? Indeed, they will all grow old like a garment. The moth will eat them up. Who among you fears the Lord? Who obeys the voice of his servant? Who walks in darkness and has no light? Let him trust in the name of the Lord and rely upon his God.
Psalm 70, to the chief musician, a psalm of David, to bring to remembrance.
Make haste, O God, to deliver me. Make haste to help me, O Lord. Let them be ashamed and confounded who seek my life. Let them be turned back and confused who desire my hurt. Let them be turned back because of their shame, who say, Aha, aha. Let all those who seek you rejoice and be glad in you. And let those who love your salvation say continually, Let God be magnified. But I am poor and needy. Make haste to me, O God. You are my help and my deliverer. O Lord, do not delay.
Therefore we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight, and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. For consider him who endured such hostility from sinners against himself, lest you become weary and discouraged in your souls.
When Jesus had said these things, he was troubled in spirit, and testified,
Most assuredly I say to you, one of you will betray me.
Then the disciples looked at one another, perplexed about whom he spoke. Now there was leaning on Jesus' bosom one of his disciples, whom Jesus loved. Simon Peter therefore motioned to him to ask who it was of whom he spoke. Then, leaning back on Jesus' breast, he said to him, Lord, who is it?
It is he to whom I shall give a piece of bread when I have dipped it.
And having dipped the bread, he gave it to Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon. Now after the piece of bread, Satan entered him.
What you do quickly.
But no one at the table knew for what reason he said this to him. For some thought, because Judas had the money box that Jesus had said to him, Buy those things we need for the feast, or that he should give something to the poor. Having received the piece of bread, he then went out immediately, and it was night. So when Judas had gone out, Jesus said,
Now the Son of Man is glorified, and God is glorified in him. If God is glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself and glorify him immediately.
Well, good morning, Crosspoint family. I have a question for you. Have you ever experienced betrayal? Betrayal by someone you love, betrayal by someone who ought to know better? In the passage that we just read in John chapter 13, that's exactly what Jesus has experienced and will experience. Betrayal by someone he had spent the last 3.5 years of his life with, the one he was closest with. These 12 people were his closest friends, his closest comrades, and these 12 people, one of these 12 people would actually betray him in the most horrific of ways. And when that happens, how is it that Jesus responds? And the greater context of John chapter 13 indeed is all about that. It's about loving each other. You know, when we experience betrayal, it's not that we should ignore it. That's not what Jesus does in this passage. It's not that we should somehow say it's okay. That's not what Jesus does in this passage. What does Jesus do when he experiences betrayal by the one that he has loved the most? Well, look at verse number 31. In verse number 31, Jesus says this, "Now the Son of Man is glorified, and God is glorified in him. If God is glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself and glorify him immediately." You see, in the betrayal, in the pain, what Jesus focused on was this one thing: the glory of God. And here's what I would encourage you with today. Perhaps you're going through betrayal, perhaps you're going through pain, perhaps you're going through difficulty. What you should focus on and what your desire ought to be and must be is the glory of God. That's what Jesus chose to put his focus on, to put his heart into, is God, would you glorify yourself through this? And so I would encourage you today, in your pain or in the betrayal that you might be facing, focus upon that which is greatest, that which we live our lives for, and that is the glory of the God of the universe.